Humanity had always been the underdog in the Galactic Alliance. Earth was a relatively new player on the interstellar stage, surrounded by advanced civilizations wielding energy weapons and impenetrable force fields. Among these technological marvels, Earth's reliance on kinetic weapons, especially the seemingly outdated sniper rifle, was a running joke. The aliens, with their arrogance born of technological superiority, couldn't comprehend why humans clung to such primitive tools. Elias Morgan, a decorated sniper with sharp eyes and steady hands, had grown used to the mockery. It didn't bother him. He knew the precision, patience, and skill required to make a single shot count. In the chaos of war, when energy cannons roared and plasma shields hummed, it was easy to overlook the power of one bullet traveling at just the right angle, at just the right speed. Today, that bullet might be humanity's last hope. The battle had raged for hours on the planet's crimson wastelands. The enemy, the Kral swarm, an insectoid race with a hive mind and unrelenting aggression, had breached the Alliance's defensive lines. Their shimmering energy shields absorbed every blast from the Allied forces' advanced weapons. The air crackled with desperation as soldiers fell back under the Kral's relentless assault. Elias watched from a high ridge, his sniper rifle steady on its bipod. Beside him, a nervous young spotter whispered updates through gritted teeth. "They're pushing through Sector 4. The energy shields are holding. We're getting wiped out down there." Elias scanned the battlefield through his scope. The Kral commander, a towering figure encased in segmented armor, stood at the center of the chaos, directing the swarm with precision. The commander was the key. Take him out, and the swarm would descend into disarray. But the shimmering energy shield surrounding him was impenetrable, at least to energy weapons. The Allied command channel buzzed with panicked voices. "All units, fall back. Repeat, fall back to secondary positions." The alien commanders had given up, convinced the battle was lost. Elias, however, wasn't ready to quit. "Captain Morgan," General Zoratha's voice crackled over the comm, disdain evident in his tone, "your position is compromised. Retreat immediately. Your presence is unnecessary." The alien general had never hidden his contempt for human forces. Elias ignored the order, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. He tracked the Kral commander's movements, waiting for anything that might give him a shot. His breathing slowed as time seemed to stretch. Then he saw it, a faint flicker in the shield, barely perceptible, occurring every few seconds near the base of the commander's armor. A power node, vulnerable for the briefest moment. Most wouldn't have noticed it. Even fewer would have trusted themselves to hit it. But Elias Morgan wasn't most people. He adjusted his aim, calculating wind speed, distance, and the node's movement pattern. The battlefield noise faded into the background. All that mattered was the shot. The bullet left the barrel, cutting through the chaos, unseen and unstoppable. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid stench of burning metal. Plasma bursts and energy beams lit up the battlefield in chaotic streaks. The Kral swarm pressed forward, their serrated limbs tearing through anything in their path. Screams of Allied soldiers echoed as the defensive line crumbled. Captain Elias Morgan remained steady, his eye never leaving the scope. The world around him was chaos, but he thrived in chaos. The Kral commander stood at the center of the advancing swarm, his shield shimmering with relentless energy. The flicker Elias had identified earlier, the power node, remained his sole focus. "All forces retreat," General Zoratha's voice roared through the comms. "We have lost this position." Panic spread across the ranks. Soldiers broke formation, fleeing toward secondary positions. Alien artillery fell silent, their operators abandoning posts that no longer served a purpose. The Allied forces were in full collapse. Elias didn't move. His spotter's voice trembled. "Captain, we have to go. They'll overrun us." "No," Elias said calmly. "Not yet." His finger hovered over the trigger, calculating every variable. The node flickered again, only milliseconds, but predictable now. The distance was extreme, even for a seasoned sniper, and a shot through an energy field was practically impossible. But impossible was just another word for untested. "You'll never make that shot," the spotter muttered, disbelief edging his voice. Elias blocked out the doubt. He'd made harder shots before. He trusted his instincts, honed through countless missions where one bullet meant life or death. Patience and precision, that was the art of sniping. The Kral commander raised a claw, signaling the final push. The Allied forces had seconds left before total annihilation. Elias exhaled slowly, steadying his breathing. His world narrowed to the node, a flickering beacon of vulnerability in an otherwise impenetrable fortress. The wind shifted slightly, and he adjusted his aim without thought. Wind speed, 4.3 clicks left, the spotter whispered, still unsure but falling back into his role. Elias squeezed the trigger. Time seemed to freeze. The supersonic round left the barrel, slicing through the dense air with unwavering precision. Everything else faded: the screams, the blasts, even the chaos of retreat. All that mattered was the bullet, an agent of fate propelled by human will. The bullet spiraled through the battlefield, past shattered debris and swarming enemies. It traveled farther than any energy beam, defying expectation and reason. There was a glimmer as it struck the energy field, bending slightly but not breaking its path. Elias tracked it through his scope, knowing before it hit that he had made the shot. The round found the node, piercing it with surgical accuracy. A brief spark flashed, followed by a blinding pulse. The Kral commander's shield flickered, then shattered entirely. For the first time, the alien warlord was exposed. The battlefield paused in stunned disbelief. The impossible had just become reality. Elias didn't flinch. "Target neutralized," he said calmly. The tide of battle had just shifted. The instant the Kral commander's shield shattered, chaos erupted across the battlefield. The swarm hesitated, their synchronized movements faltering without the commander's protection. For a species reliant on hive coordination, hesitation was fatal. Elias Morgan chambered another round but held his fire, observing the ripple effect spreading through the enemy ranks. The once relentless swarm skittered in confusion, their formation unraveling like fraying threads. The Allied forces, who had moments ago faced total annihilation, noticed the shift. "Commander's shield is down," a soldier shouted over the comms. "They're exposed." The disbelief in the Allied ranks quickly turned to resolve. Plasma cannons roared back to life, cutting through the disoriented Kral forces. Alien artillery, emboldened by the sudden turn, unleashed a relentless barrage, turning the tide of the battle. General Zoratha's voice, usually dripping with arrogance, now carried a tone of stunned amazement. "Who fired that shot?" he demanded. Captain Elias remained silent, his focus still trained through the scope. The Kral commander, now exposed, flailed in desperation. Without his shield, he was vulnerable, and the swarm's cohesion continued to collapse. Soldiers who had moments ago been on the brink of retreat now advanced with renewed vigor. "All units, push forward," Zorath commanded. "Exploit the breach." Elias watched as the Kral commander attempted to rally his forces, barking guttural commands. It was too late. An alien artillery blast caught him full force, sending fragments of his armored exoskeleton flying. The once feared leader of the swarm crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The Allied forces surged, cutting through the remaining Kral with ruthless efficiency. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds tore through the disorganized ranks. The Crimson Wasteland, once a scene of hopeless defeat, was now a battlefield of victory. Elias finally lowered his rifle, his muscles aching from the tension. His spotter, still wide-eyed, let out a shaky laugh. "You actually did it." Elias didn't respond. He didn't need to. The battlefield spoke for itself. Cheers erupted across the comm channels as the last of the Kral were either destroyed or forced into retreat. The swarm, once thought unstoppable, had been broken by a single, well-placed shot. General Zoratha's voice returned, this time devoid of contempt. "Captain Morgan, that was impossible. And yet, you did it." "Just doing my job, sir," Elias replied calmly. Silence hung for a moment, then Zorath spoke again, grudging respect evident in his tone. "The galaxy may have underestimated your kind, Captain. It won't happen again." Elias smirked faintly. "Glad to hear it." As the dust settled and the battlefield quieted, the weight of the moment sank in. One shot had turned despair into victory. One bullet had shattered not just an enemy shield but the arrogance of those who doubted humanity's worth. Elias slung his rifle over his shoulder, the echoes of the shot still resonating in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. Sometimes, it only took one shot to change everything. The battlefield was quiet now, the echoes of war fading into the distant hum of wind sweeping over scorched ground. Bodies of Kral warriors lay scattered across the wasteland, their once imposing presence reduced to remnants of a defeated swarm. The Allied forces moved through the debris, securing the area and tending to the wounded. Captain Elias Morgan stood apart from the others, his rifle slung over his shoulder. Victory had come at a high cost, but they had won a feat no one had believed possible just hours ago. His shot had turned the tide, and while the credit was being shared across countless channels, everyone knew the truth. A transport ship descended, kicking up dust as it settled nearby. General Zorath disembarked, his gleaming armor dulled by ash and grime. The once condescending alien now walked with purpose toward Elias, flanked by other high-ranking commanders. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Zorath stopped in front of Elias, his expression unreadable. "Captain Morgan," he began, his voice measured, "I misjudged you and your people." Elias remained silent, his calm demeanor unchanged. "What you did today was beyond remarkable. No advanced targeting system or energy weapon could have accomplished it. One shot, perfectly placed, changed the entire course of this war." Zoratha's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "We owe you our survival." Elias nodded once. "Glad I could help." The general's eyes narrowed slightly, as though expecting more. But Elias had never been one for grand speeches. His job was simple: take the shot and end the threat. Word of the victory had already spread through the galactic channels. Earth's once mocked military forces were now the subject of admiration and curiosity. Alien commanders who had once dismissed humanity as backward now sought to understand their tactics and precision. There were even murmurs of joint training initiatives led by Earth soldiers. "You've changed how we view warfare, Captain," Zorath admitted. "Skill and intuition matter more than I realized. Technology isn't everything." "Never was," Elias said plainly. The general extended a clawed hand, a rare gesture of respect among his kind. Elias took it, the handshake symbolizing a newfound alliance built not on superiority but mutual respect. As Zorath and the other commanders departed, Elias's spotter approached, grinning. "You're a legend now, Captain. They'll be telling stories about that shot for generations." "Let them," Elias said with a shrug. "I'm just a sniper." The spotter laughed. "A sniper who saved the galaxy." Elias shook his head, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Just doing my job." As the Allied forces regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the campaign, one thing was certain: humanity had earned its place among the stars. No longer the underdog, Earth soldiers were now recognized for their ingenuity, resilience, and precision. Elias Morgan turned away from the fading echoes of war, knowing that today would be remembered not just for a victory, but for a single shot that proved the worth of humanity.